especially to the new guys, I just want to explain what we're doing a little bit. We, for many years, we're fulfilling a many-year minhag in the yeshiva, custom in the yeshiva, which is, especially on Rosh Chodesh, not that it's especially particular to Rosh Chodesh, just because it's a good way to make sure we do it often, is we try to have someone who's non-rabbinical, who's been in the working world and is doing a successful job at balancing both their parnasa responsibilities and their learning about Hashem responsibilities to come speak about how one navigates and does that. Now, the idea, here's a little bit of a problem we have this week. And I think everybody who sits in the base medrash understands the problem. Because Rabbi Rowe is definitely not your average person, right? And he's very, very much a Rebbe and a pillar of the yeshiva. So usually we try to bring unrabbinical figures. So, okay, but we'll go past it. But I want to talk about the Havamina. Why we do that is because we want people who are more similar to the path which most of you will blessedly be taking towards a Parnasa path, and hopefully Talmud Torah will be very much a part of your life, as opposed to the rabbinical path, which I don't wish on anybody, not on my greatest enemy. No, I'm just joking. I'm happy I'm a rabbi. It gives my mother something to... my mother said one time, you know the first Jewish president? You guys heard about the first Jewish president? He gets up to speak. The mother's sitting there, turns to the secretary and says, "You see that guy standing up? His brother's a doctor." So anyway, but that's the idea. And in Rabbi Avi Rowe's case, obviously, it's got mixed up a little bit. Baruch Hashem, because Rabbi Rowe did have a career in business, which he'll talk about, and law, and different things. But then obviously he's very much in the rabbinical path, more rabbinical than anybody. But thank God he's willing to go back and share with us some of the wisdom and insights and things he learned along the way and challenges he saw. And I adopted when I was thinking about who we could get to speak this time. I remembered how much impression Rabbi Rowe made on me the last time. So I hope he makes a strong impression and really tells you some of the difficult things that he spoke about last time also. I hope he'll be open about it. But that's the idea. Okay, so that's a really important part of the chinuch and Shapell's is, we're always trying to reach the Talmidim where they're at and not, and be with you guys. And that, just to remember that, especially with the guys who are only here for a month, is a part of our thing to educate. And by the way, in the future, as you tune into Shapell's Shiur, and we always put these online also, Dafka are dedicated alum. And who knows, guys, maybe you'll be that alum in 10, 15, 20 years, will prove themselves worthy and stay connected to the yeshiva and you'll speak, and you'll share the wisdom to the next generation of Shapell's Talmidim. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't want to talk too much about myself, a biography, more about experiences, just to give you a little bit of background. I discovered I was Jewish when I was 20 years old. And I'm just a boring FFB. I grew up in Rochester, New York. And I went through the regular yeshiva system, day school, yeshiva high school. I went to yeshiva in Israel for 6 years. Got married. And then I went to law school. Because I believed, I wanted to bring a parnasa. I believed, I could continue learning and, with Hashem and work and, using with hashkafa of Torah and Derech Eretz, which I still prescribe to, still believe in. And from there, I sort of joined my father-in-law's business, which was a diamond business in Antwerp. I was there for a few years, brought the business to Israel, or opened a branch in Israel, and eventually I branched out into different fields of jewelry manufacturing in China and Italy, selling to like Sam's Club and Walmart in America. And it was quite, about 18 years, a lot of fun. I don't regret it. I didn't leave because I discovered the light, and that's whatever. It was a personal decision, which was good for me, but it's definitely a person could do very well in his avodas Hashem while simultaneously be working. But what I wanted to talk about a little bit is, we hear very often people come here, and it's very important to explain, how to balance work and learning, which is super, super important. It really, really is, and it's a tremendous challenge. But what I think it's even more important to discuss the balance between a working life and remaining a ben Torah. learning is a very, very important part of that, but it's just one aspect, one part. But the idea is remaining, what I mean by Ben Torah. This is something super important, and I feel sometimes this is missing, and some people forget this. The idea of Ben Torah is, another word could be Ben Aliyah. Our purpose in this world is to constantly, every single day, to get closer and closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? That's what we're here for. It doesn't matter where we are in yeshiva, not in yeshiva. Yeshiva is supposed to be a school, preparation for life. The life is really supposed to be, we're supposed to continue that avodah. And the problem is, many people went to yeshiva. They have this sort of this outlook that, you're in yeshiva, that's your time for avodas Hashem. I did what I had to do. I got to where I had to get in terms of avodas Hashem, autopilot, and then I'll go to the work, and then I'll learn, keep up. I have to finish Shas, but basically my avodas Hashem happened in my avodah, my work happened there. I got to where I have to get, and now I'm just going to continue life in autopilot. And the truth is, and this is 100% true, and I can't stress this enough, that if a person is not fighting, and he's not growing, he's by definition falling. Sahara is there, Adam la'amal yulad, we're in this world to fight, to work, and it's tough, it's a battle. It's a battle, and if a person feels he has no battle, it's so easy, it's usually a sign that he doesn't have to battle because the Yetzer Hara has him and he's falling. Has a grip, and it's really what it is. You're either going up, you're going down. The thing is, what's tricky about it is, it's not like the person usually just goes and falls off a cliff. It's very, very gradual. Start a little bit here, a little bit there, and then you'll suddenly look at yourself in 5 years and say, well, how did I get here? And so, first of all, to keep in mind, and this is why I think even more important than talking about learning Torah, just is how do I remain a Ben Aliyah, Ovid Hashem, Ben Torah, call it what you want, even when I'm not in yeshiva itself. And therefore, I would just preface by saying, in terms of learning, even for a learning schedule, that continue your avodas Hashem. And I'm saying, if there's a sefer that inspires you here, right? You gain Mesilas Yesharim, Chasidus, whatever. Don't stop learning that sefer. Don't say, I only have 1 hour a day to learn, so I need to learn Gemara. So even if the cheshbon of the Gemara you learn, it's essentially you continue learning those svarim that inspire you to go further in your avodas Hashem. Super, super important. And to me, that made the whole difference. Saying, had I not learned Tanya, that's a sefer I connected to, I don't know where I'd be. I know where I'd be. I'd probably be a balabas. That's the... I'd say, often we think of a balabas. What do we think of? At least I do. I always thought of it this way. As someone who was in yeshiva, or not, usually was, and became somewhat of a cynic. I was there. He lost his purity, his tmimus, and I remember those days I used to learn Mesilas Yesharim. How nice, but not for now. And there's no reason a person has to be there. No reason why he has to remember those days. And again, the reason you become cynical often is because you're not there anymore. So you sort of you feel bad. You become cynical. Okay, so let's start. So I think I'd like to talk about three different areas, which at least for me, I felt were certainly nisyonos, and certainly things which I feel are important. And again, not everyone may have the same tests. It really depends what field you're in, what you're working in, the environment you're in as well. But these are things which I experienced myself. So the first thing I think is very general. It's about learning schedule. It's not so much cutting out time. I think that it's essential to challenge yourself the whole time. Don't let it become stale. And one way to do that, what worked for me, again, is to connect yourself to people that are greater than you. It also creates a sense of accountability as well. Greater, big time, and you'll be surprised. You can be very, very surprised. There are certain very great people normally be embarrassed to go to. But ask them. You have one Tzli Hagel and Chavrusa with you. And often they'll say yes. In Antwerp, we lived there. There was a son-in-law of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach called Reb Traeger. He was retired. He used to be a Rosh Hashiva. Sat and learned all day. So two of us went in and said, Rosh Hashiva, we would love to hear Torah from you. So he gave us a private shir every single Sunday, and I gained so much from it, and people just weren't aware. They didn't dare ask him that. And it certainly creates an accountability. He asks you the whole time, how's it going in business? How was your business trip? How's this? You're connected to someone. It's very... I recently suggested one of my ex-business partners. He's semi-frum. He loves learning, but he's not fully there. He's been like this for the last 20 years. And he told me he just got a new job in Washington, D.C., and he would love a good chavrusa. Can I set him up with someone good? So I thought, who lives in the area? Maybe Rav Polyansky. Polyansky, right? He said, why not? So I gave him a call. I said, there's a really smart guy coming to the area, and I think you might enjoy learning with him. And he said, why not? They learned together for 3 years already. And why not? We just ask. Worst comes to worst, they'll say no. And it's really something, and connecting to these people. It was actually interesting because when I was in business, I did connect in a way to certain great people in ways that I wouldn't have been able to connect had I been in yeshiva. Like, one example is my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Tzika. When I was in yeshiva, unlike Rabbi Skudmaker, my relationship with him was just questions about the Gemara, answers. If I really had the guts, I'd raise my hand and shir and ask something. But that was it was never like, how's the Rosh Yeshiva doing? Just schmoozing with him. I never had that opportunity in yeshiva. And then when I was in Antwerp, Tzika came collecting. So I offered to drive him around. So I drove him from place to place. I drove him to the airport, picked him up. I schmoozed about everything with him. I told him Divrei Torah I was thinking on, and Nebuch, he had to suffer through it, and he was listening, say, wow, Valdik, I would never do it. But it was very, very special. And I had this connection with him, and it was very important for me at the time, to have this, keep a connection with these great people, and not say, okay, I'm out of yeshiva now, so, keep it for the yeshiva people. That's one thing which I really can't, and also to make yourself feel important. I mean to say, make yourself needed. You're in a community. And, you feel, there could be an extra shir. Maybe offer to give a shir. Maybe organize a chabura. Again, I'm just speaking from experience, not because whatever I did is the right thing. I can only tell you what worked for me, what was good for me. So I'm telling you what I did, but there's certainly many other ways of doing it. I felt in Antwerp at the time, I didn't have enough Torah. I had a chavrusa, but so I started a chabura once a week that Balabatim would come, Balabatim like me, and everyone would give a chabura once a week on Thursday night. 2 people showed up the first time. The next week we bought a big kugel. Then 10 people came. And it worked. And it was amazing. And the whole week I was busy with a chabura. Who's giving it this week? They called me, I cancel. And when they canceled, I usually had to to prepare one night to give one because I never wanted to miss. It's like you're busy around learning, around different things. That's super important. And I think that's another lesson. Okay, two other areas I would like to talk about, which again, going back to the introduction. If you're working on your Avodas Hashem the whole time, and you have this mindset of being a Ben Aliyah, so a lot of these issues will not be too difficult to deal with. It's always when you forget about that, and you start this slippery, slidey slope, that things become very, very difficult, and suddenly you catch yourself in places where you don't realize how you got there. So that's why I can't emphasize the importance of continuing your being proactive in your Avodas Hashem, realizing if you're not growing, you are falling. If you're not growing, you're falling. And it's a fact. Okay, so the next thing, which to me was a big issue in that it was a shock. It was a shock because I came from yeshiva, and I came to relatively frum environment of the workforce. Whether it was in Antwerp, whether it was in Israel, I was around a lot of religious people. That's why this was shocking to me, and I actually had to go to Rav Weiss to talk to him about it because I was totally thrown off. That is the issue of honesty in business. Honesty in business. We think, I'm an honest person. What's the problem? That suddenly you go somewhere and you realize people around you who seem like good people. And again, everything I tell you here, I'm going to say things which don't sound so nice, that they're not the klal. You'll find a lot of amazingly honest people and great people. But sometimes you'll find yourself, like I did, around people who are good, but sometimes, they did shticks. And I'm talking about legal loopholes. Everyone, illegal loopholes I'm talking about. Simple illegal, a lie here, a lie there, forged invoice here, forged invoice there, it's okay, save you taxes. Why should I pay taxes to those authorities? Those are shoyim, those are something. I could pay for a chasana, isn't that more important? Or pay for my son in Kolol. It's serious isurim. So what's the problem? So, midbar sheker tirchok, don't do it, but what if everyone's doing it around you? And everyone looks at you like you're crazy because it's natural. If they're doing something wrong, they'll make you feel like you're crazy for not doing it because that's their way of sort of justifying their actions. And they do that the whole time. People are going to turn to you and say, you're crazy, I have a psak, you're allowed to lie for shalom bayis, and there won't be shalom bayis in my home if I don't come with a certain amount of money, so I could do that. All these things which are crooked Torahs, but I'm exaggerating, but they're going to hear very, very crooked things. And then what do you do? So at one point, that's when I went to Rav Weiss, And I started feeling a bit like the story of Rav Nachman of Breslov, that everyone's insane around you, and maybe you're the one who's insane, and maybe I'm crazy. I'm this like crazy yeki who's just, And so I actually went to Rav Asher Weiss, and I poured out my heart. I was very, very upset. And he really he told me that they're crazy. No, they're wrong. And he said, you should know that there are other people who are not like that. He started giving me examples of other people and certain people, just to know that. Because it's just like the kids in school. So I'm going to say for another subject as well, when you have kids, kids want something. Everybody in the class has this. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone. And you feel so terrible. Then you find out who's the everyone. It's two people. But those two people are, they're the everyone. And so often it's like that. Everybody does this shtick. Just give you an example, and it's neged to me. Mamish happened recently. So I left business, but I had some investment still. This is something which happened now, so it brought me back to the sugya, and I'm very emotional about it right now because it mamish happened. I'm talking about last week. But this thing happened the whole time when I was in business. We had a property which we sold in Europe, and so naturally there's profit. So what do you do with this profit? You pay taxes. So accountants, working out the taxes. I get a phone call from one of the partners, religious Jew. In fact, he's a name you're going to see on many buildings, and he says, "Listen, I'm working out a very good contract to everyone's advantage. Don't rush with the declaration because you're going to be very happy with what you see. I found some incredible, legal loophole." Okay, great. About a month, nothing's happening. I call him up and I say, "I want to understand a little bit. Just explain to me this legal loophole you found." So again, it turned out to be totally illegal, totally. But I was walking home from Shapell's and I stopped and I was just in shock. We forged this invoice and we got a company of lawyers from Israel to forge something else and they agreed with us to this. Basically, you're not going to pay any taxes. Gavaldik Baruch Hashem. So I told him, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this. And what do you mean? I asked the Shaila. He asked the Shaila. His rabbi. Whatever. So it was very, very, very horrible. And last week, he called me, Baruch Hashem, that they're not doing it for them. I'm out. I declared my taxes. I said, you do what you want, But, they called me names, told me I was crazy, and I'm nuts, and it's not fair for my kids. One of the things one of the tests, one of the things for myself at least, an indicator if something's right or wrong, I think it's pashut, is it something you'd feel comfortable telling your kids around the supper table? Look what I did today in business. I forged an invoice. They look at you like, Daddy, that's a lie. Could you look at him in the eyes? Kids are the best, and kids know what's right and what's wrong. Seriously, you have to be able to look at them, and kal v'chomer to be able to look after 120. Right? Are you going to feel good? If you feel bad about something, there's a chance that it's wrong. People make decisions in life, and sometimes you sort of brush it aside, and you don't want to. It's just worth it to be able to breathe a breath of fresh air and says, maybe I lost a bit of money, but I made the right decision. And why I'm saying this is another thing which related to what we just spoke about Kol HaShomer Shabbos. What did Chadam say? What was it again? What's the term? More than Jews keep Shabbos, Shabbos keeps them. I'm sure there's a lot of truth there, but you have to be very careful. I'm not coming to say that if you do everything right, you're feeling honest, you'll make as much money as the guy who's lying. I don't know. It's just like, I'm not going to say that if you close your shop on Shabbos, you're not going to lose any money. It could be you will. It could be you won't. There's brachas for sure. There's stories which are true. But that's not why I close my shop on Shabbos, because I'm not going to lose anything, right? The point is, I know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me exactly the amount of money I'm supposed to have. And either I'm supposed to have it or not. If I'm not supposed to have it, it's also not good. I could take something that's not mine. It's detrimental to my nefesh, right? And if I'm supposed to have it, believe me, God knows how to work in a straight way. He's not crooked. So that's not an important lesson. I think in Emunah, a person has to. And again, if you're learning, you're working on your Avodas Hashem the whole time. You're working on Emunah. It's less of an Nisayan than someone who just stopped doing that. Which I'm telling you, the majority of people stop working on Avodas Hashem. You work on Rashi Tosfos, but it's not going to do the trick. It's not going to do the trick. That's another important area. The last area I want to talk about, again, not commonly spoken about, but I think it's real. I think it's real is the area of modesty. Modesty around women. I think it's important. Even if you're in a very, very religious setting. Because again, there are certain things people are going to tell you, everybody does it. And it's just not true. And even if everyone did it, it wouldn't be right. It's just not true. And you have to be careful. You have to be careful. And there's once I heard a shir by Rabbi Willig from YU, which had a very big impression on me, and I actually put to practice some things he said there. He said in that shir that even though generally we discourage people taking nedarim, oaths, promises, it's better not to take an oath than to take an oath and God forbid break it, right? Sometimes nidrei ziruzin, if it's for a mitzvah or for something important, if that's the only way it'll keep you from, it's important to make an oath. And he gave examples. He says someone goes on a business trip, and believe me, there are a lot of nisyonot on a business trip. As frum as a person is, trust me, there's a lot of tests. I recently read an article in the Mishpacha, and it was a rabbi talking about business trips, and he was so on the mark, saying, don't fool yourself. There's a lot of tests that a person puts himself into when he goes on business trips. Sometimes you have to, but there are ways of limiting it. So one thing which I did myself, but everyone, for himself does his. I made nedarim, certain nedarim, and I promise you it helped me very much. I can't tell you what would have happened without that, but I know that it made it easier. For example, for me, I just felt one was, actually he gave that as an example, and I thought it would be very appropriate, is I never went out for drinks. Went out for drinks. Even if it meant I was looking for a certain buyer, trying to get contact with a buyer of Walmart for 2 years. And finally I met that buyer and said, okay, let's meet at the cocktail bar after the show. Normally I would have been, no. If you want, I have an aversion to alcohol, so they thought I was some recovering alcoholic, which they're fine, they respect very much. And then they say, no problem. I said, let's meet in the kosher restaurant or in the lobby. And then they're fine with it at the end of the day. I never had an issue. But I made a thing because that's a place where people act in a frivolous way, very, very lightheaded. Too many stories, too many not nice stories end up when people go out just for a drink. That was one thing, but everyone has their own thing. Some people it doesn't affect them. I never, Baruch Hashem, I didn't want that test. Other things people could do with the television in the room, everyone can make based on, the person has to know himself. He has to know himself. I had another one, I don't go for walks by myself at night. Just wherever I am, with a friend, it's one thing. Just don't, in these, okay, that's another thing. And just an example where everyone does it and it's fine. And to me was just a bit of an eye-opener. We used to go every year in the diamond industry. I'd say the second biggest trade show in the world. The first biggest is in Hong Kong. Twice a year in Hong Kong, in March and in the summer. But the second biggest one, it's the biggest in America, is in Las Vegas. JCK, it's everything. It's diamonds and jewelry, everything. And you have to go. In other words, to the extent that if you don't go to that show, you're not a player. You don't go to the show, you're not a player. So you have to be at that show. If you're anyone in the market, in the wholesale market, the retail market, you've got to be at that show. So it's not a choice. And Baruch Hashem, a lot of religious people go to these shows. Tons of them. It's packed. Minyanim, kosher food, whatever you want. Any nusach you want. But so the first year I was sent by the company. Okay, Las Vegas. Where am I staying? So the boss says, hotel called the Venetian. It's really nice because the show is there. And by the way, the hotels are dirt cheap over there because they make their money on people gambling. So you can get the nicest suite in the hotel for, $60 a night. And okay, very good. And don't worry, there is a minion there. And kosher breakfast as well. Everything good. But I arrived there and I was shocked because the hotel is made in a certain way that wherever you want to go in the hotel, you have to pass through the casino. Okay, so I said, I'm not going to gamble. I don't, Baruch Hashem, I never got into it, so I don't have the Yetzer Hara for gambling. It's only once you've tasted it that you can, so I'm not going to start. But every single time, 6:30 in the morning, you walk into Chakras, you see things, I normally, Yeshiva Baruch Hu, would not walk, I don't walk in a mixed beach. Try not to, at least. But that's exactly what you're doing over there. And yes, I told people, this is what all the from, everyone does it. You have to, we're in business, parnasa. But the same religious people, suddenly they're going to shows at night, which, I don't know, whatever, Cirque du Soleil, things like that, which are not terrible, but not something which, I wouldn't take my wife to such a show. I'd be embarrassed. So I was very upset when I came back, because I thought it's very detrimental, mamish not good for a person to learn. So Hashem, I said, it can't be. Is that what everybody really does? Yes, that's what everyone does. I looked into it a bit more, and Baruch Hashem, I was very friendly with a very big businessman, which maybe one of the biggest diamondaires in 47th Street called Herzi Hasenfeld. He was one of the biggest supporters of Moshe Wolfson. He's an example of an honest, moral, wonderful person. He's a guy, if you can ever get him to speak in yeshiva, it'd be incredible. Herzi Hasenfeld. He's known, he's a legend. Herzl is an amazing person. I had a story about him, and he told me, "What do you mean everybody stays there?" Sometimes I stay there because normally he says there's another place called the Alexis Park. It's a less glamorous hotel away from the strip. There's a free shuttle, and you'll see it's much better. So next year I went there. It was 90% from Jews, no casino, with a minion factory, Daf Yomi Shiurim, and it was amazing. And everybody there, except one, everyone there was there because they didn't want to be in the Venetians. I discovered there's a lot of good people, a lot of people who have this issue as well. But when you're there with those people, you're not going to hear about it. Because, they feel bad for what they're doing, so they say everyone does it, so you're the same. They want to stay there. And I say everyone except one, because one person, I asked him why he's in the Alexis Park. He says, when my wife comes, I go to the Alexis Park. So that's the, he didn't want her to see it. But Baruch Hashem, there are a lot of good people, a lot of very good people. You just have to, again, if a person is working on his avodas Hashem, and it's at the top of his mind, and he's actively working on being a Ben Aliyah, there'll be issues, but they're not going to be as terrible and as difficult. It's when a person forgets that and he starts falling, that's when, you don't want to catch yourself afterwards and say, listen, I used to be such an Oved Hashem, what happened to me? What happened to me? And that's the danger. The danger is it doesn't happen suddenly. It happens very, very gradually. So instead of falling gradually, you could be growing gradually the whole time. And there's no reason you can't be a better person next year than you were this year, even if you're working, because there's so many opportunities, so many opportunities to Mekadesh Shem Shemaim. It doesn't matter how much you're learning, but there's so many opportunities to grow. And I'll just tell you one thing, my inspiration for all this, and he's not here now. I had a chavrusa for many years. Since I got married, I lived with him. I stopped for 15 years, and we started again. Baruch Hashem, he comes here once a week. Every Wednesday, he's not coming today. And this was a big businessman. His name is Moshe Rabinowitz. If you knew Mati Rabinowitz from Ritzvi's? Yeah. His brother, his older brother. And he's my inspiration. You see, this guy was a very big businessman, and the guy could put most Rosh Hashivas in his pocket in terms of learning, and in his avodas Hashem. The guy's constantly growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. It's incredible. Every time you meet him, he takes on another thing, and he's thinking this, and maybe we should learn this safer, maybe this safer, and then he puts it to practice, and he just shows you it's not a stira, and he was always in my mind. Whenever I think of an Oved Hashem who's working, I think of this. You'll see him. He comes every Wednesday. He's an amazing person.